Camp Director Susan Chick here. Just another day at camp. Did I say day? It's been dark for what? 2, 3 weeks now? Just a long, endless night. Hello, darkness. Are you there? Oh, of course you are. You're everywhere. Suffocating. Eternal. Limitless. Has anyone seen the sun? Anyone? Oh, it's missing! Just like those 2 kids from last week! Well, let's get to today's announcements. Just a moment here. Damn it, I can't see anything in here. Oh, okay, here we go. Racket sports have been postponed. Need to be outside and in the sunlight for that. Track club is still meeting, though. Good thing! You kids really need to work on your running. Oh, and as a special, much-needed extracurricular this week, Camp Counselor Eben is hosting a woodworking class. We're running low on stakes, the pointy kind. How very fun! Of course, just a reminder that the weather will not be letting up anytime soon. Expect blasts of cold, wintry winds, and blackout snow. Keep those coats on and keep your necks covered. Stay warm and stay alive!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bunk 237, a horror movie podcast. The podcast where we pretend to be at a camp, where we talk about horror movies. It's, half of a concept that we came up with, and we're going with it.
I think it's a whole concept.
Robin Zlotnick.
And I'm the other host, Tuyet Wen. And today's guest is fellow podcaster and friend, Sara Century, who is a horror writer, critic, and host of Bitches on Comics.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah.
What's up? It's so good to be on this podcast talking about movies that I will not spoil because I think now you're going to announce it.
I'm going to spoil it. Yes. Thank you for that amazing setup. This week, we watched 2007's 30 Days of Night. The vampire flick takes place in Alaska in one of those stupid towns where it's never light out for 30 days. I don't know if you know this, but vampires generally can't handle the sunlight. Anyway, it stars Josh Hartnett.
Yay!
Josh Hartnett. Melissa George. Some other very 2000s actors.
Ooh, very 2000s.
And it started as a comic book idea that then was unsuccessful, so he pitched it as a film, the creator, Steve Niles. Then the film went nowhere, so he went back to the comic idea. Then the comic got made. It's a mini-series of comics. And then, because that was successful, finally, they decided to make this movie. It was a long journey to get to 30 Days of Night.
You know what I think is interesting too is like if and correct me if I'm wrong, but 30 Days of Night is the only one that was a major sort of motion picture, and even though there's been sequels and prequels, like there was like a direct to video right, prequel, and then a miniseries, but it feels like there was one movie and then there's been these sort of like other lower budget
right.
like iterations of it.
Yeah, somebody was just like, oh, you watched that? There's definitely not a sequel to that. And I was like, there is a sequel.
Right?
It was direct-to-video classics.
Yeah. Sarah, I know that you're a comic person. Now, did you read the comics? Were you a fan of the comics like before the movie, after?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember whenever this comic came out, and it was like all the nerds had their minds blown by the concept, right? It was just like vampires in Alaska. Oh my god!
Yeah. I mean, it's
that's
a good
the
idea.
Smartest thing I've ever heard. Like, you never would have thought about it. And just like, yeah, it seemed like something that maybe somebody had like brought up to you at a bar one time and you forgot about it, and then all of a sudden like somebody made a comic out of it and you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted to read. And the art is incredible. I want to know, Ben Templesmith, if you read the original 30 Days of Night comics, like that visual style that they have, I think has a lot of impact on how they shot this movie. It looks very, very cool in the comic. And I think that that's like 90% of the sell of that comic, other than like that amazing concept of like,
Right.
you know, Alaska vampires, etc. And like just being like alone, right? Like there's no way that anybody can come to help you. But like the art is great, and that's kind of like something that, you know, even in the beginning is very visually striking.
Yeah, I think it's you can tell definitely like watching the movie, especially some of the bigger shots, like the town shots. I think actually my favorite shot of the whole movie, it's about 40 minutes and it's sort of the overhead shot and it goes over the town as like people are like scattering and like the vampires are like praying and there's like a pack of them all over, and it's like such a beautiful shot of such chaos,
Just
like
carnage.
right, yeah, such carnage, and it's so cool. I could see how well that would translate like from the page to the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all aesthetics, right? Like that's kind of how the comic is. Like the idea is really cool. There's like some plot stuff, you know, I mean, it's cool, whatever. And like, that's like, I mean, it's just like the aesthetic is so killer. And then besides that concept, and then the fact that they do bring some of like the building design into it, you know, like, so you can tell that they made an effort to kind of at least reference it visually, right?
Oh, I appreciate that.
Are you guys vampire fans in general?
Oh my
And how
God,
do these vampires
so much.
stack up to you?
I will say that, yeah, as a gay person, I don't think I can escape life without being a vampire fan. Because isn't that like, that's like the classic stereotype?
Yeah. No.
So like lesbian vampire movies, so influential whenever I was a kid, and I made a zine about them. But yeah, so I think I like grew up a lot on, well, we grew up probably all on like the same vampires, right? Like there was always like vampire movies around, a lot of vampire spoofs and things like that. And then, yeah, just kind of watching like those old Hammer horror films and stuff like that. Like you can't beat it, right? Like all of that stuff is really good, really fun, really goofy. So I'd say I do like vampires.
I like vampires a lot. I definitely am like a vampire nerd, I think. Like, or I definitely think I used to be a lot more so.
I don't know if I knew this about you.
Oh man, I love vampires. I was like, for like multiple years from like 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I think like that was my Halloween costume every year.
A specific vampire or just like
a vampire. And then I can remember it was probably like 5th or 6th grade. My brother took me to go see Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula with like Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. And I had a picture of Winona Ryder like from a magazine, from her in that costume and I remember this so distinctly because I was like, that's who I want to be, because I wanted like the hair, the dress, the romanticism. And then it was like also like a few years later, was it like Interview with the Vampire? I read all of the Anne Rice books. Like I was like such a dork.
I love it. I love so much.
Vampire movies. And what I really like about this vampire movie is I like that they're like such predators. They're such creatures, you know.
It's a really good creature, is what it is.
Absolutely.
They're like something a little bit different than what you've ever seen before. All their teeth, man.
So cool.
The teeth, all of the blood all over their faces. They're like black eyes. It kind of takes it to like I Am Legend, right? Where it's
totally.
they're definitely taking the idea of a vampire as just a monster, like something that's really scary, very unappealing.
And they have no motive beyond just like hunting and eating. And even though they have like what seems to be a kind of a high level of intelligence, like kind of an ancient, you know, awareness of themselves, they're just predators. They are straight up just predators.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool because I think the early 2000s also had a lot of like romantic vampire movies,
exactly.
You know? It's like big stories of like mortality and love and like, you know, a lot of Brad Pitt influence on like the vampire genre. Or it was like action movie, even with like Underworld or something. There was still like this whole like ancient love story between like, you know, the werewolves and the vampires. And this was just like, nah, dog, they just like eating.
Yeah, they need to feed and they need no one to find out.
Yeah, totally. And they're so smart. Like they're so like I really appreciate that they're real tactical. Real like tribe
and they hunt
mentality.
in a pack, right?
Yeah, right. So cool. And there's like they were so smart about like disabling the communication, disabling transportation, power, using the woman as bait.
Yeah, and then on top of that, they can like leap really far and run really fast, and are just like crazy superhuman like movements that they have.
Yeah. The fact that they, you know, look human, you know, they're like sort of vampire faces.
Yeah, because they're kind of like shark-like, right? And like even their visual presentation, they have like the big teeth, and then there's like the black eyes and stuff. So I felt like they were going for a very specific vibe, and they succeed because, as you say, during this time it was like all romantic vampires who were just like, oh no, I've killed again. And it's like,
right. There's always
how sad.
Like a distraught vampire
Right.
that
Do I
like
turn this woman that I love into a vampire? Yeah.
And now she's mean, just like me. It's terrible. And it's just like, well, why were you even there? You should not have even been there. Why were you even associating with humans?
Totally.
Like, what are you doing? It was so irresponsible. But this one, you're just like, oh yeah. I mean, they're so weird. You know, it's like that guy goes into the bar and like tries to order a bunch of meat on a plate or whatever.
Yeah, let's talk about
the
Ben
stranger.
Foster's character.
Yeah, the stranger.
Yeah,
but he's immediately off-putting, right? Like that's kind of like the big thing is like you can tell that guy's a creep. Like there's bad things, very bad aura around that guy, like from the very beginning. So yeah.
Alexa, leave us an Apple Podcast review.
Here are the top 5 reviewed apples. Granny Smith, Fiji, Red, the other red one, and finally Pie.
It's not working.
Oh man, I guess our fans will just have to do it. Hey you, you. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast if you're enjoying the show, because Alexa's being a real bitch about it.
And she doesn't have fingers to type.
I'm doing my best. My father was right. I should have gone to Brown University instead of Tampa Bay.
Wait, can I give out my first badge? Because it's
yes, of course.
Yeah, it's to him. I wanted to give him the fucking poser badge. Because he's like not a vampire, but he walks in trying to order raw hamburger,
so bad.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like really dark and morose, and he's like ordering
They're gonna
raw
take
vampire.
me with them.
But it's like, he's not a vampire. He doesn't need to eat raw hamburger. That's just weird.
Right.
He
He's
just
doing
wants
the
to
edgelord
belong. He just wants a group of friends.
thing. And he's so sure it's gonna happen for him.
Yeah. How do we think that he met the vampires? I don't
know.
This
I didn't-
relationship
Renfield,
start?
right?
I was gonna say he's a Renfield character.
Wrong
right?
place, wrong
Yeah.
time. They pulled him in. He was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna be like a vampire too someday.
Oh,
Nope.
He probably saw Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah,
probably,
definitely.
He
probably
was
a
like, this
huge
is like
dork.
a Brad Pitt, like Tom Cruise thing, right? Like
Yeah.
we're doing that. All
Yeah,
right,
okay.
cool. I'll just wait for you to turn me into a vampire so we can be like Louis and Lestat, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Right, because he definitely had the most emotion out of all of the sort of like bad guys. The other guys were definitely just hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they all show up in this way that's just like, oh, it's even worse than that guy. Like these guys are even worse.
Yeah.
Like they're so scary and intimidating from like the very, very start.
Wait, was he the only bad guy to actually have like a motive beyond eating?
Kill stuff?
Yeah, beyond kill stuff. I like the kill stuff.
And then that was his like overall motive in a way too. But
Right.
Because it's also like, why would you... I mean, I understand why you'd want to be a vampire, but it is also like, what's your deal, guy?
I wonder why. I'm always like, I wonder sometimes because I'm like, would I really go for that if somebody was like, okay, well, you could like live forever, but you'd have to feed on people. And I'd be like, so you mean I'd still have to talk to people? I'd still have to leave my house even if I was immortal.
It seemed like he was really lonely.
Yeah.
And that he needed a friend.
Needs
and
a
this was like
bud.
the only way that he thought he would get friends at this point.
Yeah, and you're like a tough guy, right? If you become a vampire, so he's like, "Heck yeah, I'm ready to have all the power. I'm gonna go from having none to all of it."
Because he was a short guy, like the scene in the beginning when he's trying to stand up to Josh Hartnett and he's trying to be like the tough guy, but he looks like he's like a foot shorter. You know?
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, that character was really a lot more complex than I really gave him credit for.
Kept that plot moving, that's for sure.
I have another badge for this stranger. Ben Foster. It's the intern of the month badge to him because he was basically just like the vampire's intern. Like he did all of the work, got none of the benefits. Yeah. Like when I think about his character, I was like, wow, he must have like location scouted. He had to go steal all those cell phones. He had to destroy that helicopter. Like he had a big hand in setting up the place for them. And just, but didn't get any of the benefits, which is just like, but he was a great intern.
They taunted him when they found him in the jail cell. They were like, he thinks he's getting in the club.
Which also feels like an intern, like when you work for a shitty place and you're trying to move up
we'll hire
and you're
you.
doing everything and you're just waiting to get that full-time contract. I like Josh Hartnett in this movie, even though his character from the comic book is supposed to be Inuit. Like,
you know, totally
right. But I did like him in this movie.
Right.
I think because it's from 2007 and he's Josh Hartnett. I just like want that time capsule. It makes the most sense to me.
Right.
And he was like trying to get out of his thing, right?
No,
like
not
he was
at all.
like, I don't want to be dreamy anymore. Like I want to be in like this gritty horror film.
Yeah.
And, like kind of
Sucks for him because he was super dreamy.
Sorry, buddy, you're just stuck being the dreamy guy. I don't know what to tell you, Bangs.
I have a question. I have a big question for everybody.
Uh-oh.
Do you think, is this a good movie?
Oh,
That's a good question.
Really good question.
I wondered the whole time I was watching it if I liked it or not. I like was having a really hard time with it because I was like, this is the time of, right? Like it's the time of horror where everything kind of looks like a horror video game a little bit.
Yes.
And like, so it has all of the cool visuals, super low on substance, really cool idea, you know, like basic characterization, like doesn't go too deep on anybody for sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't call it a bad movie because I feel like the visuals are great. Like there's so much interesting cinematography, like the way that like the vampires would be like moving, like you would see them, but like the camera's still moving and they're like walking and then it's like blocked and then like it's them again, you know. It's like the whole time they did a really good job of making you feel like like you were there, right? Like it's like the whole way that the filmmaking went was just like them being like, here's this like creature that's like creeping around you and like kind of knows where you're at but not 100%, like not ready to strike yet. I think that they conveyed all of that stuff really well, so I'm just like, I can't call it a bad movie, but it is like a car chase horror film, right?
Well,
like there's literally a car chase in it.
What it suffers from, and I actually have a badge for it, is being from 2007.
Yeah, it's like so 2007.
My badge is it's the most 2007 movie.
Yes,
of all time. It's I learned that it was shot during the day and then color corrected, which makes a lot of sense.
Really?
Because there's just like that blue night filter over literally everything.
Yeah.
Sarah, I had a similar feeling watching it where I was like, I think I like this. Like, I like this, but also
right.
There's an understanding for me that I'm like, oh, this is like a pretty surface level movie. There's like, you know, a lot of horror movies and why I like horror is like usually there's subtext or underlying themes. You know, and even in like vampire movies, like you were saying, there's always like a lot of homoeroticism, themes about mortality, about like love, about humanity. But this is like none of that. There's no
right.
overarching kind of bigger sort of thing that they're pushing for. It's just like cool looking vampires and a cool idea about a town that never sees sunlight.
Yeah, and cool scenes too.
Very cool scenes.
Get, like the guy's head on a stake and the chase scenes and like the
very cool death.
Couple that gets pulled under the house and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think another thing that got me was the vampires were such cool creatures, but they all wore like Brooks Brothers suits.
I did notice when the girl vampire Iris, I believe, when she died, when she got like burned by the UV light and she died, and then I really got a look at her outfit when she was laying on the ground, and she's sort of wearing this sort of 2007 kind of like baby doll kind of dress with the combat boots,
like pink velvet dress.
Yeah, with the combat boots, and I was like, okay. I mean, I guess in my logical brain, I'm like, well, I guess vampires don't really feel cold, so that doesn't really matter to them. But I'm like, where did you get that? I just had a lot of questions about
like,
where why would he wear a coat if he wasn't
for
cold?
style? You know, that's why.
Why are any of these vampires wearing clothes at all?
Right.
It's true.
That's a different movie.
Because vampires,
different movie.
No matter the movie, vampires have to be stylish.
That's true.
That is
so
very
stylish.
true, because they did keep
just
to
a
that
rule.
function of vampires. I did like that they generally obeyed vampire rules of like sunlight and like the UV, you know, these sort of UV light as a weapon.
From weed. It was so funny.
Yeah.
I was just like cracking up. I was just like, in 2007, you all had no idea like how ubiquitous weed was going to be in like 10 years. And they're just like, oh, the grandma's like secretly growing weed. And I was like, girl, all of our grandmas are secretly growing weed now. Like,
right.
That would be, it would be a different story, right? Like it'd be like, so which house of lights do you need? Because we have a lot of warehouses full of like lights.
Especially in that tiny town in Alaska where there's literally nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? They have
Exactly.
to have tons of grow houses.
That's what I would think in 2021. I guess in 2007, though, people were like, hee hee hee, grandma.
I know, it was, I think that was a fun little, I had like this a minor badge. It was the weed grandma badge.
Yeah.
For one, being dope as hell, and two, just conveniently having UV lights, which I didn't even think about until like later when they brought it up. I was like, oh, that's why they had her like smoking weed.
Yeah.
Totally.
But they also added the fact that she had cancer to sort of like soften the blow of the weed.
Right. Soften the blow.
Sorry, that sounds really inappropriate.
I was like, I hope to God that someday my weed smoking becomes a plot device that is, I mean, it has been, I guess, in my own life many times. But I was like, yeah, if only you could have weed smoking kill vampires later, then that would be really sick. Be prepared badge. goes to grandma.
Oh, that is.
Even though she got axed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she wasn't prepared enough. But hey, listen, you would not be prepared for this, right? Like,
No
I mean,
way.
there's like, that's how I feel about so many horror films where I'm like, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that girl does everything she should do. Like, she goes from place to place to place, and it's not her fault that all of the places have serial killers in them. Like, she's trying really hard to get out of there. She is doing what she can do. And that's how I feel about the grandma in this.
I did kind of feel
like, you
too
try.
like when they were hiding in the attic and they were like, we have to move. I'm like, you don't. Like, you can just
you should stay there. It seems
like,
the smartest
obviously
to
you
stay
do
there.
because the movie has to progress. But like,
Yeah.
you really don't. Send one person to the general store.
Looking back, it would have been better if you stayed there, actually.
You know, they definitely could have had sort of like the Walking Dead community where they just stayed there. Also because it's like they only had to wait it out for less than 30 days at that point.
Yeah.
You know, as they were going, I think it was like 2 weeks in. I was like, guys, just
Like, it would have sucked, but like, they
do you
could've
know
done
how
it.
long I've been in quarantine? Like, you can hang out for 2 more weeks in an attic.
They're like 30 days is insurmountable time, and we're just like, girl, just turn on the Netflix, like, read a 32 chapter manga, like.
My other big question was that the sacrifices in the movie, the 2 big ones was Bo when he with the tractor like through the town or whatever
With
to
like
create a distraction.
I have
Yeah.
a badge for him.
Yeah, what is it?
I mean, it's the chainsaw badge,
It's
right?
the,
Like,
the least effective explosion ever.
oh, nice. Good
Because
one.
he tries to blow himself up to
Yeah.
sacrifice himself, doesn't.
yeah.
Doesn't.
And then he's like, "You're not going to get me." And then he just gets his skull crushed in like the most like humiliating.
Yeah, that really fun.
It's just a sad death.
Yeah.
That first one, I was like, was that necessary? Couldn't he have created a distraction without killing himself? Because like right when he was like doing pretty good on that tractor until he purposely ran into the building,
Right.
and it was like, why did he do that?
Yeah. Why did he do that?
Why did he do
Yeah,
that?
that happens in movies of that time a lot too, right? It reminds me of like Sin City, whenever like the Bruce Willis story where he's just like, and then I died so that she could live. And it's like, but all of your enemies are still alive. Like they're going to kill her. This is very upsetting, actually.
Like there
and
were
that's
several
I
things
felt.
you could have done to stay
Yeah,
alive.
That's
It's
how
like,
yeah.
they're still vampires. Like, I don't think that the threat is over.
Yeah, and you were already like successfully killing a bunch of them with your
Right.
giant chainsaw machine.
Right, you were pretty safe in that thing.
Yeah, you had
A
a
plus to
shotgun,
that thing, though.
You had a bear claw. You had that cool whatever chainsaw sticking out thing.
So good. Anytime there's like chainsaws introduced into a horror movie, I'm always just like, yes.
Ooh, yeah, I agree.
Thank God.
When that one vampire got sawed like right in half. Oh, so cool. Loved it.
It's just like, all right, here we go. Now I'm having a good time. Popcorn, everybody.
Some cool machinery like that spinning.
Oh, yeah, the
spinning wheel of
shredder
horror.
grinder. I actually,
the grinder thing.
Yeah, I have a badge for that. It is the Muffin Monster in the first act badge. Because that's what they referred to it as. The one character way at the beginning. In the first act, when the one guy with the helicopter is complaining about how someone destroyed his helicopter, and then the guy that's running the place is like, oh, check out what I found out in the Muffin Monster, which is such a weird name for that. But I did know, like watching that, I was like, ooh, this is gonna come back later. I can tell.
Oh yeah, I was 100% like
Literally
someone's gotta get crushed in that thing.
Yeah, totally.
Every single thing anybody says in this movie comes back later in the movie.
And sort of related to that, going back to unnecessary plot points, where there are 3 days left, and they are maybe it was more than that at this point. They see Billy shining his light in his room, and they're like, "Oh, we gotta go get Billy." It's like, just let him wait it out. He's made it this far.
Totally,
and then they find out that he went fucking crazy and murdered his family.
Yeah, that was horrifying.
And still decided to take him with him.
And then Billy sucked. And then Billy sucked the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I
definitely...
was glad that he got his arm chewed off by the Muffin Monster and then axed in the head.
Honestly, his death was satisfying. All right, so that first sacrifice, Bo's sacrifice, I don't know if that was necessary. Josh's, sacrifice, they could have just waited a few hours. He could have, right? It was literally just a few hours.
It to happen.
I think I think what they were trying to do is say that Stella and the little girl were trapped under a building and the whole town was on fire. So they were worried that she'd get burned up or something. So that's why he did it.
Right. But then,
the woman's fault again.
But then, when he goes and does that and goes and confronts the gang of vampires, she does crawl out from under that car, but then she stands there for a while.
Yeah. Just being Melissa George or whatever. Yeah. I had just got finished watching the remake of the Amityville Horror that she is in with Ryan Reynolds. Ooh. And so seeing Melissa George pop up in this, I was like, yes, you were all over these movies.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. That was another very 2007 part of the movie, is a leading woman who was really big in 2007 and that we have not heard from again.
Yeah, for sure.
I liked her character. I thought she was very reasonable, and I thought she was believably tough. I think sometimes women in these movies are kind of one or the other. They're definitely either immediately dead or they're kind of superhumanly good at fighting,
Right. I always think of Barbara in the Night of the Living Dead, but then the opposite whenever they did it, the 1990 reboot, and she was like, lock and load, boys, or whatever.
Yeah. I needed a little more depth of something in the middle, and I thought that Stella was believably tough. I mean, obviously still scared. I also like that she really bought into the vampire thing right away, or very early on. Because I think the thing with vampire movies and zombie movies is there's always a point where they have to divulge whether or not in that universe vampires and zombies exist. And in this one, I think I had a badge for for Jake. For Evan's younger brother, it was it's vampires badge.
I think it could be vampires.
Yeah, he was the first one to say it, and then Stella was just like, okay, that seems fine.
Yep. It is at this point. It's a little eye-rolly when people are like, they seem undead and they're trying to suck our blood. And it's like, just say that they're vampires.
Yeah, totally.
Just let them exist in this world.
This reminds me of that book I read, Dracula.
I really want someone to say that in a movie.
I hope it gets written into a movie.
In a vampire movie where the only vampire lore that exists is just the book Dracula.
That was it. Nobody ever followed up with anything. That was it. I would like to give Melissa George in 2007 the Melissa George in 2007 award.
Love it. Fantastic.
Which is just, about Melissa George,
It's
2007.
pretty self-explanatory. Yeah.
You know how it is. I'm going to go ahead and give Josh Hartnett a badge for the rugged badge, right? Like he's trying really hard to be rugged here, and I just think that we should call it out and appreciate that that's what he's trying to do.
I have a badge for Josh Hartnett too. It's the Just Cry badge. 'Cause he had tears in his eyes for approximately 90% of the film.
Yeah.
But just wouldn't cry it out. And he just looked so sad. And at first it was because of his his wife and their troubles, and then it was because of all the vampires. And I just wanted to say, take a moment, cry it out, let it out, and then move on.
Oh, I also have a badge for Josh Hartnett. I think
I was gonna ask.
Let's all take a moment to recognize Josh Hartnett in this movie. My badge for him was the TFW, when you realize you have to chop off your friend's head badge. He had to do that a lot.
Oh yeah, that was his story.
And as the sheriff of a small town, it was like everyone that he knew. But I also appreciate that he just did it.
Yeah, I didn't waste any time being like, "Oh, can we fix them?" I had a badge for the realistic reaction badge when Evan and Stella are driving really fast to try and get away, and the vampires encircle the car and just start slowly flipping it over.
Yeah.
And they're in the front seats going, fuck, shit, oh no, fuck. They're like, they don't know what to do. And it was just such a genuine, realistic reaction that I was like, this is hilarious. This is the perfect way to react to this very slow, horrific thing that's happening.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting because I feel like it's such even whenever this movie came out, I was like, it's so goofy, I guess, and it's kind of it starts
goofy.
to be a little cartoonish, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that there's something to it, and that's something that's been whenever I believe that there was a couple movies on the list of what to talk about, and I was like, I guess I want to talk about 30 Days of Night because I wonder what other people think about this, especially as horror fans, because it's such a kind of strange entry, I guess, because it doesn't fit soundly into any really of the categories, right, for vampires.
Right.
It's kind of its own thing a little bit. And even though it's huge budget, right, this was the time of those big budget remakes of horror films and stuff, so you saw a bunch of big budget horror that was meant to appeal to a lot of people and not necessarily be that scary. But this is scary. There's parts of this that are actually scary. And
totally,
I don't know. Yeah, it's a kind of a pickle, I guess. I was thinking about that a lot while I was watching it too, and being it's not deep on any level, but I do still like it. I don't know.
Yeah,
it might be a bad movie, but I
fun.
still like it.
Yeah.
Do you know if you guys saw it when it came out?
I
think I tried to watch 10 minutes of it or something and was like, I don't care at all about this, and was like, I'm gonna go read something way more edgelord and something that's all about serious feelings. This is too goofy. And now watching it, I'm like, come on, lighten up. That would have been fun for
Totally.
you.
I think my earliest memory of seeing this, I don't remember if I saw it when it came out, but I do remember catching it on cable television, probably
yes,
while
me too.
Right? While I was
I think that was the first time I saw it. It was just it was on TV one day,
and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I haven't seen this yet. I guess I'll watch it, and I ended up just watching the whole thing. And I remember also in a similar way, I don't remember having any big thoughts about it except like eating junk food. You're just like, this is fine, this is good. This is satisfying in this moment.
Is. It's like a satisfying movie to watch when it's on TV. You know?
Totally. I would not turn down watching this again.
You guys, like, I don't think I saw it when it came out, but I remember the poster very specifically. Yeah. Being like, that looks cool.
And the poster is very much like the comic, right?
Yeah.
Like they have kind of the same, like the comic has like that vampire's mouth with like all of the teeth, and that's what the poster was too, right?
Yeah.
That's it, right? Like, I mean, I can't believe that. I think that once he matched it with like the artist, I can't imagine him having like a hard time selling a concept like this, because it's like that cover is just so iconic.
Yeah, I did have the persevering persistence badge for him, because he knew he had a good idea. And he just kept going until someone else also thought he had a good
Steve
idea.
Niles is like a horror comic icon, kind of like he's done a ton of horror comics, so if you're into that stuff, go check it out, because he's got a pretty big bibliography behind him. But I'm glad they made it. I like it. Yeah. And I'm glad everybody had fun. I think like it seems like Josh Hartnett was having fun.
Yeah.
I want to give maybe like the Moppet Award to like the little kid in this movie, the plot driving Moppet, who's just like, I'm so cute and alone. Help me.
Wait, are you talking about the last kid, Gail? The one that's like covered in blood? Aw.
Yeah.
Moppet's a really cute word.
It's a little Moppet, right? Like the little like imperiled child, and you're just like, oh no, I must save them.
Yeah. I don't know if I would be that good of a person at that point.
Oh man, that's it though. Robin. See, I want to say that I wouldn't be that good of a person, but then I think about like every time my cat like meows or something.
You guys, that is a child covered in blood, alone. I'm like walking around in a town
to walk away from
full of vampires.
Yeah.
You are 10 feet away from this child.
Yeah, and I'm hidden, and she's not.
It's just like, what's the point of both of us dying? But that's the point. That's why I gave her the Moppet Award, is that, like, despite my apprehension and my selfishness, my inherent selfishness of wanting to continue living on this earth, I would still probably have to die for it and be like, don't kill the Moppet.
I mean, I want to give her props for surviving that long, however she did. I did feel like there probably were a lot more things expanded on in the comic books. Like, I felt like these sort of extra storylines.
Not really.
Oh, really? Oh.
A little bit less, actually.
Oh, okay, well then.
Like, we don't ever really learn what their Evan and Stella's marital problems were.
Which is so funny to me, because they're just like our undisclosed marital problem.
Yeah,
and then it's like, she's just like, I'm leaving. And he's just like, well, have fun whenever you leave or whatever. And I'm just like, you're giving her nothing. I can see what your marital problems are.
When she's like, I'm in town if you want to talk, but not for that long. Yeah, both of them like were not very mature in that moment. But my first thought was like, wow, I didn't think it could get any colder in Alaska.
I love how they were like, oh, we need a way to keep her in town. Let's just have this giant machine ram into her car as she's trying to leave. These plot lines are always like kind of funny to me though, because it's like both Josh Hartnett and Melissa George are so ridiculously beautiful that it's like if they called you and they were like, I guess I'm in town or whatever, you'd be like, I'm there, I'll come meet you. Like, what do you want? Do you want to work it out? I would work it out with you.
Because it's like, hey man, it's like Alaska. Population just went down by like a third. Like there's
like come back, move back in.
I'm stuck
I know
here
it's
for
not
the next
that bad.
30 days.
30 days of
I
night,
can change.
Baby.
Yeah, you would be doing anything. You're just like, do you need a ride to the airport? Okay, but can I go with you? But none of that happened because they were both being beautiful, staring off into the distance.
She had great hair throughout the whole ordeal. She really kept her hair really coiffed, and
even
really
when
nice.
she's like laying on the ground, like crying, and you're just like, wow, your hair like looks really good though.
Like, dang, all right. I mean, I don't know what you're doing in that 30 days, but great
Hit
upkeep.
Me up.
Great.
I never understand that in horror movies. I'm like, put your hair up. Like it's gonna get caught in something. It's gonna get pulled. Like, just put it in a bun. so you can run
you're
faster.
literally like running and just being like, any person in real life would be like, wow, my fucking hair is
Right.
in my eyes. Like, fuck this. But at the same time, still, Melissa George, Josh Hartnett, I hope you crazy kids can work it out. Just kidding. I know that he dies at the end. I was thinking that this wasn't a very deep movie, but we just talked about it for a really long time. Like,
That's
we
true.
talked almost as long as the movie is. Like, you know, take a few minutes, but like, definitely we've talked for a while. If there was nothing there, we would not have had this much to say. So
That's very true.
That's very true.
a badge for us.
Yes, so
talking about
talking about
30 days of night.
We could talk about it for 30 days and 30 nights. No, that was a different Josh Hartnett movie. 40 days and 40 nights. He's into
I
the days and
forgot
nights.
about it. Oh my god, I forgot about
Do
that.
you think at his house he has a 30 Days of Night poster next to a
Next to a
40
40
Days poster?
I hope he does.
He better. I mean, what
And
a
it's
missed
on Instagram
opportunity.
for
if
sure.
not, yeah.
I'm gonna check out his Instagram after we get off this call.
Oh, man. Sarah, before we go, is there anything that you would like to plug to tell our listeners where to find you?
Oh, yes, of course. I always have so many things going on. I am the co-host of the Bitches on Comics podcast. We are going to do a Pride extravaganza where we talk to all kinds of queer creators, mostly of comics, some of other things too. And so, yeah, check out Bitches on Comics if you want to hear more talking from me. And then we do a collection called Decoded Pride as well, which is speculative fiction by queer creators. And so there is 30 days of that.
Cool. How appropriate.
Perfect.
Yeah, so 30 days of Pride. And not as ominous as it sounds, but we have every single day a new story goes up, right? And it's going to be, you know, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, all written by queer creators.
awesome.
And
That's excellent.
by the end of it, we do a PDF. So you can subscribe now. Like you could we're doing pre-sales. Always, that's something that like helps us a lot whenever we're going into paying everybody. We make sure that we pay all of our creators. We pay semi-professional rates, which is like something that really has helped people get into like, you know, into clubs and organizations that can further their careers. So I feel like we're doing a lot of work for you know, a lot of fictional, amazing works and the creators who create them. So we're trying to do that, and also it's just a really good anthology. Last year there were so many amazing pieces that just made me weep, and every single year we get like, you know, 200-ish submissions or something like that. We have to choose only 30, so it's always like, you know, the best of the best. So I'm always very proud of that. You can check that out at decodedpride.com.
That's
Love it.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, people, for listening. Thank you, Robin, for being there. Thank you, Shane.
237. Horror movie podcast. We're so good at ending podcasts.
Thank you, Josh Hartnett, for your bangs and your eyes. And thank you, Melissa George, for your bangs and your eyes.
It's true.
That is a great way. That's a great way. That's a great way to end.
Ending.
Bunk 237, a horror movie podcast, stars Tuyet and Robin Zlotnick as the final girls of Bunk 237, and introducing Alex Skoke as camp director Susan Check. The show is produced by me, Shane Segretti. Our theme song is written and performed by Dan Zlotnick, and our outro music is written and performed by Axe Slasher. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and it may be featured on an upcoming episode. Have a badge of your own for this movie? Follow us on Instagram at Bunk237Pod and Twitter at Bunk237, and let us know. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded.